Welcome to another episode of The Road Less Traveled. I'm your host, Evan Drisner, and we got a new backdrop. It's nice and exciting. And finally, for once, we have a guest whose business means a lot to me. I'm a huge fan of coffee, and my guest is Alisha Esmail from Road Coffee. Thanks so much for being our guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I've met you a few times, a number of times. You've kind of been around in the Saskatoon circuit. And my first memory of Road Coffee, once you did that jump, was the award you got at the NSBA banquet, probably 6 years ago-ish?
3 years ago.
Oh, man. Well, when you're my age, time is like dog years. It goes really fast.
Hey, that's fair.
So I know you, coffee wasn't your first, why did you get into coffee? Because you weren't always in coffee, right?
No, I wasn't always in coffee.
Were you planning on being in coffee?
Yeah, there was a part of me that always wanted to do something with coffee, but I didn't know what it was going to be.
Yeah.
And so for about a decade before I started Road, there was something in there that was like, okay, eventually I'm going to work in coffee.
Just 'cause?
I was always weirdly passionate about it, even as a kid.
You just love coffee.
Yeah, in high school, I'd always like traveling, seek out new places, the best places,
That's
the
cool.
scene.
Yeah, that's cool. So then 3 years ago, coffee in Saskatoon would have been like Starbucks and Tim Hortons, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. So then it's like the craft beer scene. All of a sudden it's getting trendy and people want craft drinks. You're really a craft coffee person. Was there a business plan that you had to put out? How did that work? Did you get investors?
I didn't get investors, no. And I was coming from the nonprofit background.
Okay.
And so even the transition to business was a little different.
Okay.
And a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah.
But also really exciting.
Yeah.
So what I did is I got a job at a local cafe in the city here,
Okay.
and started working on a business plan and learning more in depth about the industry. So I'd been learning about the coffee industry for about a decade, but I still had a lot of learning to do. So hit the ground running and asked lots of questions, started traveling more with the purpose of coffee in mind. So going to trade shows and meeting people in the industry across North America.
Oh, that's awesome. So you kind of alluded to it. You came from a not-for-profit. And as we kind of go through your story a bit more, we're going to see how Road Coffee isn't just about coffee. There's bigger purpose to the coffee for you. Would you attribute that community mindedness to the not-for-profit stuff you were in, or is it how you grew up and your family? Why is that not-for-profit being before and then in your business having that community aspect? Why is that important to you? And where did that come from? Because most entrepreneurs, that's once you're successful, yeah, okay, and now for taxes where you have to give a certain amount away, but that's like a core part of your business. Is that ingrained in you? What caused that?
I think it's a mix of what you're saying. I think part of it was growing up with parents that were from Tanzania and hearing their stories of growing up in a developing country and then moving to Canada. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is part of that led me to doing development work overseas and working in places like South Africa, Haiti, Nepal, Panama, Jordan, and seeing a lot of poverty, but a lot of poverty due to systems. Mm-hmm. And I think in mathematical equations. And so a lot of the problems I saw, I'm like, these are very solvable problems. Yeah. And we can solve that. And often I do think business can be the answer. And so we can have for-profit companies that are also solving a very real need or problem. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just been a mix of the road I've taken, no pun intended, but it's just kind of almost been compounding from all my life experiences, if that makes sense.
No, that's kind of the whole point of this show is where people end up is it's not a straight road, but that journey is what makes the end, really. So, we could get really philosophical and then people would turn the channel probably, but I've always thought the biggest impact in any culture or community is going to be from private giving. So either households donating money or businesses giving back. instead of governments where it gets a lot more bureaucratic and the money gets diluted and there's so much paperwork. So that makes a ton of sense. But when you're starting, there's got to be, like, why would you go from a not-for-profit and then, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur? Was that just a bug inside of you? Was there fear involved, or was it just like it just felt right and you just did it?
That's a good question. So for me, I definitely had a bit of rosy-colored glasses on.
Okay.
But for me, it was vision driven.
Okay.
I saw coffee farmers around the world being taken advantage of often by middlemen and people that are often not even visiting those countries. And then I'd come back after a couple months overseas, and the first thing I would do is get to an airport and go spend $5-7 on a coffee. And so that disconnect started to bother me, and I was a part of it. And since I always knew I wanted to be in coffee, and I actually always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, even as a little kid. Like,
really?
I was like that lemonade stand person, always coming up with ideas.
Like, were your parents entrepreneurs?
Yeah, my dad owned a business for a number of years in the city here, and then my mom became self-employed later on in her career.
Okay, so you'd been around it, so it wasn't necessary. Okay.
Yeah.
So as a little kid, you're selling lemonade. You know you want to be an entrepreneur. You see this issue, and you want to be part of the solution, right?
Correct.
So, but that could, okay, so great. Sounds great on paper, but it can't be easy for a young entrepreneur to just be like, I'm starting a coffee shop. Is it that easy?
Not exactly, no. Especially since, as a roasting company, my primary goal was to disrupt the coffee supply chain. That's like a pretty...
Yeah, that's big.
It's a pretty big vision, and so that's why I say I got into it very rosy-colored glasses.
Okay.
With like, I'm going to move home to Saskatoon, and I'm going to change the coffee industry. But I quickly learned the systems that are in place for a reason. And some of these systems have existed for hundreds of years. But at the same time, we're in 2019, and so the coffee industry is one of the few industries that's still functioning the same way as it did hundreds of years ago.
Which is weird.
Which is weird, especially with the technical revolution we're in.
Well, and I can only imagine that the volume has increased tremendously in that time.
Totally.
So I was fortunate enough to MC the WESC Gala. Like, I'm going to say a couple weeks ago, but you're probably going to say actually that was 3 days ago. But it was without a doubt within the last month. And you got an award there, and I feel like every time I go to an award show, you're going to win something, which is good, speaks well of you and your business. And you alluded to being down south on a trip and how it was kind of serendipitous for you, because you talked about how that was the place where you decided that you were going to do this. So what were you doing at that point, and what took you from that to going, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, so I was actually in Montana, where I was based out of. So
Okay.
whenever I wasn't overseas, I was living in Montana.
Okay.
And I just recently gotten back from a trip from South Africa, where we'd been doing some water and food security projects. And I remember spending time with some coffee roasters out there and some tea plantation owners, like Rooibos tea. South Africa's famous for it. And again, that same thing, just like burning inside, like, that's not... The system's so broken. I wonder if I could do something about it.
Yeah.
And I just like knew in my gut. I'm sure every entrepreneur has that moment where they're just like, it's time.
Yeah, there's something about that feeling. Like, even in life, like, there'll be moments where it's just that moment that works. Like, where your gut's telling you, and you, like rose-colored glasses, you just go for it. And other times that would have never happened. You would have been like, no, red flags, there's some issues. So you're back in Montana, and you're going, okay, I know what I want to do. I want to do coffee. Part of that is you got to drive for business, right?
Yep.
You love coffee. And then there's that third aspect that you've really built your business about, is that humanitarian kind of aspect. So you were doing that. Was that something you went to school for? Or was that a side passion? Was that the first passion that you just thought would be the main one, and then coffee took over? Like, where did that come from?
It had always been like a pretty big passion of mine, and I went on this trip to Panama like the day after I graduated high school,
Yeah.
and I was hooked. I was like, this is what I want to do. And so I started taking university classes, and then I just kind of landed my dream job.
Yeah.
I was on an international flight every 3 months. I got to work in some pretty cool places. Like, it was hard work, and like I got sick a lot overseas, and it definitely came at a cost. But we were making some pretty cool changes, and it was just a wild adventure, right? Especially when you're young,
Yeah, that's
in
fair.
your early 20s, and it was really I used to call it my dream job, and so I feel like I kind of gave up my dream job to start my dream company.
Which is crazy because it can be pretty easy, especially when you're in a like something that you're very comfortable in, you love what you're doing. It can be easy to be complacent with it almost. Like, okay, I'm good. Maybe I'll just invest in a coffee company. What, like, if you're looking back now to that time in Montana where you're like, I'm doing it, like, what was it? Like, what made you want to leave your dream job where you're having impact to take something that might work, might not work, still has impact when you know you're making impact? What do you think that was?
I think it was the challenge and the lure of entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Like, even since I started Road Coffee, I started it for the coffee and for the vision, but I actually fell in love with entrepreneurship. And I think, and we got some new projects coming out, but I do see myself as a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so I think it was just a pull.
Yeah, that's fair. We all got the pull. Well, at least most of the people on the show that I've interviewed have that drive, which is awesome. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with Alisha from Road Coffee. Stay tuned for some more exciting stuff. Right? You're not gonna be boring.
No, I hope not.
Okay, then you have to. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm with Alisha from Road Coffee. She's just kind of been walking through the journey that took her from humanitarian, not-for-profit, to now coffee humanitarian. And you said something in the first segment about it comes at a cost. And that's a pretty common theme, I think, for any entrepreneur that's willing to risk something. Like, and you were talking about traveling and how you're getting impact. There was a lot of impact, but you were getting sick and stuff. And that struck a chord with me because I'm not sure any impact doesn't come with a cost, without a cost. So this cost now is you've quit your job, your stability, you're moving home,
Yep.
and you're starting a coffee shop. Was it as easy as that? Or did you you had to find a building to sell coffee out of, or were there business community really supportive? Like, how did you go then from Montana deciding this is what you're going to do to, okay, let's make it happen?
Oh, great question. So I moved home to Saskatoon, which I even got a lot of flack for because I was
Yeah.
working on an international level.
Yeah.
People are like, why are you moving to Saskatoon? But again, something in my gut was like, it's the right place to start a business. And I very quickly realized why. And the why is the business community here is outstanding. There's so much support, so much encouragement. Like, I didn't even know how to build a proper spreadsheet when I started. And I remember sitting in my business coach's office one day just crying. And he's like, okay, I know this is hard, but like, you need to learn this so you can properly price your product. Like, basic entrepreneur stuff. But I feel like time and time again, whether it was accounting or not even like sales, like how do you approach a corporate company? There's always amazing people in the city that are willing to grab a coffee and chat and learn from those that have gone before us.
Yeah, it's the Saskatchewan way. Like, I mean, I'm not from here either. And when I moved, I got involved with the chamber originally. And just started going to events, and all of a sudden I had some business mentors, I had some centers of influences that really kind of walked me through the networking to the how you build relationships, all of that stuff. So you're right on. So you found a business mentor right away, right?
Yeah.
And then you just started getting it done, right? So how did you, because it's not like you're going to Safeway just to buy coffee. Like, so I can't imagine a young entrepreneur with a brand new business in Saskatoon just buying coffee. Like, is it a wholesale thing, or were you at that point traveling and already meeting farmers and going direct? How did that start for you?
So we started by buying the traditional way, the way every other roaster purchases, through a traditional importer who buys from another importer or an exporter in the supply chain, just because I had to get some sort of product to start selling. And at the same time, I started working on a solution of how we can maybe go around those people and buy direct. And so, we've probably spent the first couple years figuring that out. And now we have a solid model where we're buying directly from exporters or farmers, cutting out that some of the middlemen and making sure our farmers are getting paid.
Yeah. So why is that important to you? Like, because most consumers would be like, oh, if coffee tastes good, it tastes good. But there's in a lot of developing countries, without a doubt, in that kind of, especially in, I can imagine in the coffee, really any export where they're using manual labor to get it done, there's a lot of injustice, I can only imagine.
Right.
So how did you decide to even combat that? Like, obviously you're going, okay, there's got to be a better way to cut out the middleman. But how do you know that the coffee you're buying is coming from a place where the people that are doing it are getting taken care of, and it's fair trade, kind of that fair, and the quality's up there? Because cutting out the middleman, I would assume, as just a consumer, that's kind of the quality check, is the person that knows, I buy hundreds of thousands of pounds of this, I make sure it's clean, I make sure it's good, and I distribute it. You're going direct. So how have you managed that aspect of ensuring that you're dealing with the right people, that they're being taken care of, and the product is good?
Right. So for us, a lot of that is relationship.
Okay.
So that's where I'm able to play off my background in international development and having that international network to pull from.
Mm-hmm.
So I started there, and then networking and just getting out there and meeting the right people. Some of it's been serendipitous and how I've met the right person at the right moment. Our Costa Rica farmers, for example, they're my favorite. They're actually, when we buy our coffee from them, it goes from Rhodes' bank account right to their bank account.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Which is awesome and very rare in the coffee industry. And so we're trying to do more of that right now. The exporters are great because they provide a lot of the support on the ground to the farmers. I can't be there helping them with business practices and helping them improve the quality of their crop. But we've found a number of really amazing exporters that work alongside our farmers and that are able to really be there for them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So you see that impact then when it's direct, like when you're, like you said, your Road Coffee bank account right to that farmer. Do you see, is there a difference to that farmer then working with you? Is he making more money, or is it just that he is given the freedom to run his farm and you're not going to impede in it? What's the benefit to them?
That's a great question. So the benefit is they're seeing the financial gain of their coffee. The reason why our Costa Rican farmers try and sell directly to roasters now is because they had multiple years in a row where a traditional importer promised that they'd pay them for their crop, but they needed the inventory up front. These farmers never got paid.
Yeah.
And so for them, in these developing nations, that's the difference between food being on the table or being able to clothe their kids. What we're able to do is we can be like, hey, you're not only getting a fair price for your product, but we're offering a holistic value to the farmer.
Yeah. Interesting. So I guess when you're cutting out the middleman, you're probably able to pay the farmer at a fair rate, probably even a little better than the big guys would do. And you're getting the product at a good price, which means you're not also, because that's sometimes the problem too with these, you're not a not-for-profit, but some of these companies that have a very outward lens of their business, is their prices are so much higher because they're paying way more, or the process just isn't as clean for them, so they're not getting the discounts. So then really their whole business is based on society's willingness and awareness to give back and to be helping, right? That's what I like about your coffee. I've never gone to a road and been like, whoa, their prices are through the roof, but I'm getting a great coffee and I know it's doing good things, not just for an entrepreneur in the city, but it's going to some other farmers. How have you navigated that with the pricing? Because I can only imagine that that's not just like a quick handshake. Yeah, I'm going to sell you coffee for $5.
It's definitely an interesting route, especially from between the farmer and the roaster, and then the roaster and the end consumer. I think the way that we source and what we're doing is quite different than most of our competition and most other roasting companies. But also we want to be, it's still coffee, and we want people to be able to afford their coffee.
Yeah.
And we don't want people to buy our coffee just because we're doing good. Like, yeah, we're doing good, but we're also like, we're just quality, amazing coffee. Like,
Well, that's the best part. When the product's good and it's doing something good too, it's a win-win for everybody.
exactly.
You're doing something new with your business model.
Yep.
You're microfinancing.
Yep.
Why don't you explain that, and then I'm going to ask you why you're doing it.
Okay.
So explain what you're doing with microfinancing.
So we recently launched our first project with Co-op Peru. It's very exciting. We're working with 5 farmers in Peru this harvest. My one stipulation is that one of those spots is held for a female farmer.
Okay,
Right?
that's cool.
Got to pass it on, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we've helped them purchase fermentation tanks, and they're going to teach, basically it's an education program. So they'll teach these 5 farmers how to improve the quality of their crop. And there's some really cool deliverables, like a minimum of 2 points on the specialty coffee scale, which is equivalent to like about 20 cents per pound US that they can charge extra. And for a farmer in one of these countries, that's significant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And 20 cents US per pound extra. And so we're really excited. There's a lot of other projects we have lined up. This is our kind of our first. We're very confident it's going to be successful. And we're excited to move that into now our business model. So for every cup or every bag sold, some of the proceeds are going into this microfinance fund, which will now be passed on to the farmers.
Was that always part of your vision for Road, or has that been a development as you're navigating the road of Road Coffee?
Yeah, it's definitely a development.
Okay.
When I was younger, I definitely was interested in microfinance, but it was more of something I heard from them, and I heard from the exporters, and just understanding their needs. A lot of the time, finances came up and access to finances. So sometimes farmers only need like a $500 loan, but they can't access it, or if they can, it comes with 70% interest.
Yeah.
So imagine going to get a mortgage, but having a 70% interest rate.
No.
We would never come out of debt. And so for them, it's easy for us to be able to provide that alongside with our relationships on the ground that can teach them how to develop the skills they need and take steps towards their independence and freedom.
So why, I mean, I suspect I know the answer, but why, like you said, it's been a development, but why is that a development like that important to Road? Is that the core of your business?
That is the core of the business. Yes, our goal is to provide value for these farmers so they've been living in the red for generations, and none of us as entrepreneurs we'd go out of business.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And the future of coffee is even at stake. Like, the next generation doesn't want to take over the farm. Their parents want them to go to the cities, get an education. So unless we change the system in which coffee currently functions at and the supply chain works at, we might not have the same type of volume 5-10 years from now.
Oh, man.
So if you want that
Take that
type of
back.
show,
Take that back.
yeah.
Alicia, thank you so much for being our
Thanks
guest.
for having me.
That's incredible. Thank you for watching another episode of The Road Less Traveled. I'm your host, Evan Drisner. Of course, our guest, Alicia from Road Coffee. Where's your business located?
We're located at 209 Avenue D South.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you stay tuned for other great episodes of The Road Less Traveled on Shaw Spotlight. We look forward to seeing you next time.